हमारी सरकार आज एक प्रमुख संविधान संशोधन विधेयक प्रस्तुत कर रही है। इस विधेयक का लक्ष्य लोकसभा और विधानसभाओं में महिलाओं की भागीदारी का विस्तार करने का।
मैं प्रस्ताव करता हूं कि भारत के संविधान का और संशोधन करने वाले द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन 128th अमेंडमेंट बिल 2023 यानी नारी शक्ति वंदन अधिनियम 2023 को सदन में पूर्व स्थापित करने की अनुमति दी जाए।
Hello and welcome to Newscentre. I'm Parikshit Luthra. The Lok Sabha began its first proceedings in the new Parliament building after Prime Minister Modi, along with senior ministers and other MPs, officially entered the building. Prime Minister Modi, in his address in the new Parliament building, introduced the Women's Reservation Bill, which was later tabled by Union Law Minister Arjun Ram Meghwal. The bill seeks to reserve 33% of the total seats in Lok Sabha and state assemblies for women. According to the bill, one-third of the total number of seats reserved for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes will now be reserved for women from those groups. The bill mentions that the reservation of seats for women will cease to exist 15 years after the commencement of the Act. The bill was first introduced under the UPA government in 2008 and was passed by the Rajya Sabha in 2010. However, it lapsed in 2014 after the UPA government lost the general election. I'm now joined by Congress spokesperson Sujata Paul, Aditi Phadnis, political editor at Business Standard, also with us on the program. Aditi Phadnis, let me begin by asking you, how important is this bill going to be for the BJP electorally? Yes, the BJP is saying that it was first introduced 26 or 27 years ago, way back in 1996. Both parties, that is the Congress and BJP, are claiming credit for this bill. But how do you see this benefiting the BJP government electorally?
First of all, I have not seen the actual bill, so you will have to forgive me if I'm not fully cognizant of what is in the bill. But as far as I understand, this bill will come into effect only after delimitation, right? So if delimitation has not been done yet, it will clearly not be valid for the upcoming Lok Sabha elections and the assembly elections, which are to be held now. So that's the first caveat. We have to see whether from when this reservation will become effective. Secondly, reservations have been made for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe seats. I'm assuming from the existing lot, but the population of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes has gone up. Maybe more seats will have to be reserved. So that's another issue. The third issue, I think, is that as far as I can tell, the reservation will be by rotation. Exactly what this means, I'm not very clear about. But the fact is that existing MPs and MLAs from general and reserved constituencies will then have to vacate their seats if their seat is going to be reserved, a reserved one for women. So now how this will be received by the men, I am really not sure about.
Right. And of course, the opposition as well. Let me go across to Sujata Paul of the Congress party. Sujata Paul, will the Congress be ready to support the bill in the current form? One issue that parties like the Samajwadi Party and the RJD had with the bill way back in 2008-2010 was that it did not cover OBCs. What do you think will be the stand of the India Alliance put together? Will all partners be on board?
First of all, when this bill was brought in 1996 and after that by the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government and subsequently by the UPA government. And if I remember very clearly, I can tell you that Nirmala Sitharaman had said that we accept this bill in its present form. Of course, the Samajwadi Party and the BSP, AIMIM and parties like these, refused to accept what was given in the bill. And also Yogi Adityanath and even Sadhvi Sadhvi Uma Bharti, she had also opposed the bill. However, when you talk about the present bill, there are a whole lot of issues that will be addressed tomorrow, and we'll come to know what the stand is, because only after discussion will we know that. However, if I point out what has been written in para 4 of the statement of objects and reasons, which is very concerning, it says that fresh legislation for constitutional amendment to provide for as nearly as may be 1/3 of total seats in the House of the People, Legislative Assembly of every state, and Legislative Assembly of the National Capital Territory of Delhi to be reserved for women. That is one contentious point that I could see in that, on that page. Then the second one I saw on page number 2, where it's actually been mentioned about the amendment. Article 334 has been amendment to say that 334A will be, like my previous panelist said, that delimitation is undertaken. And how will the delimitation will be undertaken? It will be done only after the census, and not just after the census, but after the census is published. So you have the first step of the census, which hasn't been done since 2021, and the excuse has been about COVID. But has the government even said when they are going to do the census? If you look at all the countries which came for G20, we are the only ones who have not had a proper census because of excuses by the government. Now, what it says is that the delimitation will take place after the census. It will be after the census is published, and it also says that it shall cease to have effect on such expiration of a period of 15 years from such commencement. So you are correct. You know, when you spoke in the beginning, you said it seeks to reserve. It only seeks to reserve and make a fool out of people, because this is a jumla which has been given by this sarkar, and it is our right to be in the forefront of politics. It is our right as women to have representation. Right. And what we are seeing is, and you get any BJP spokesperson, they're going to say, thank you, Prime Minister. That means a man has to decide whether we are going to be 33% or maybe we will be 33%, and this is not going to happen in the next election. So I don't think the government is really going to be able to benefit from this, because people will be able to see how many women are there, in the political fray for electoral politics.
Right. Okay. Now, as far as the 15-year clause for the applicability of this act goes, that was there in the bill that was brought by the UPA as well in 2008. But some important points being raised by Sujata Paul. Also, according to certain reports, the next census will take place only in 2027. And this means that the bill may be effective only in 2029. So there is still time before it comes into effect. No clarity as to when the next census would take place. Let me get in Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw at this point. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, thank you so much for joining us on the program. How do you see this moment for India? This should have happened long time back. We have been talking about this for almost over 2 decades now.
Well, for all of us women, this is a very important milestone to occur. I think irrespective of what we are talking about, I think it's very important to pass a women's reservation bill. Of course, like many of the other panelists said, timing is something we have to look into. So obviously, this reservation bill will not apply to the forthcoming national elections, but at least if we pass this bill and we can see this women's reservation bill take effect in the next general elections, at least it's a very, very important step to be taking. Now, right now, we have roughly about 15% representation of women in Lok Sabha, which we are now trying to more than double. And I think there's no reason why the forthcoming election should not also see more women being, put into the fray in terms of the forthcoming general elections. I do believe that you need women lawmakers, because many, many policies are being enunciated for women, and we must do it for women, by women, of women. So I think that is the real crux of the matter. We must have more women policymakers and lawmakers. And I, for one, believe that we have some very strong women lawmakers, past and present, who have played a very important role for nation building, and we will see many more women participating in politics going forward. Because if you create this mandate, it does create the first level of of equal opportunities for women, and after that, I'm sure you don't need a reservation bill to see more women entering the fray.
Right. But Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, we've heard the law minister say that the number of women, if this bill becomes a law, will increase from 82 to 181 in the Lok Sabha. But don't you feel the ambition? Currently, we're talking about reserving 1/3 of the seats. Don't you think the ambition should have been much higher when all the conversation is about gender parity, bridging the gender gap in the workforce?
Well, there's always a ramping up period. You can't suddenly make a huge statement saying we want 50% parity. Even in corporate India, we constantly give ourselves targets to reach a 50% gender parity by 2030, or some companies are looking at 2035, and so on and so forth. So right now, most companies, at least our company, has a gender parity of about 30%, which I personally believe is very low. But we have made a goal post of 50% parity by 2030, and many companies are on that path. So I think just like that, I think the political arena also needs to ramp up. So I think 33% is a good start.
All right, let me get Aditi Phadnis back in right now. What are the other challenges that you feel that this bill could raise in the days to come? One was, of course, rotation of seats. One was, of course, what about the OBC community? Do you think there will be more demands, a lot of litigation around this as well in the months to come?
Well, there'll be litigation, but certainly there will be a lot of misgivings. And there are sort of crucial gaps in the bill, which I feel society at large and Parliament has to address. The first is, okay, you've got 33% reservation for women as and when in Parliament in the Lok Sabha. This bill does not mention Rajya Sabha, presumably because I guess Rajya Sabha is indirectly elected, and they envisage that as the nature of the state assemblies changes, that will be reflected in the Rajya Sabha. So let's put that aside for a moment. But ultimately, Parliament is not the institution that will decide to whom seats are given. The parties, political parties, are the ones that will decide who to nominate as their candidate for X, Y, or Z assembly seat. Now, there's no dearth of women who probably will petition to be nominated to these seats. But will they be women who are in public service, or will they be wives and sisters and daughters of existing male MPs and MLAs who are losing their seat and therefore want to keep the seat, as it were, in the family? So that's number one. Number two, respectfully, I would disagree with Ms. Majumdar-Shaw. I think some of the most important legislation which has affected women has been piloted actually by men. So we need a degree of parity, and we need a degree of change in thinking to change mindsets about women. I don't think women are the only people who can think in ways that will help them or benefit them or empower them. Uh, that kind of change in mindset is what we need, not necessarily reservations, which, I mean, as a woman, yeah, I'm glad that there is reservation, but I think the jury is still out about the way this will affect Indian society.
All right. And what about crimes against women, approach towards women, and the mindset as well? All those issues need to be addressed as well. We're taking a short break, but when we return, we'll continue this discussion with Sujata Paul of the Congress Party, Aditi Phadnis, and Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Newscentre, and we're focusing on the Women's Reservation Bill, which has been tabled by the BJP government in the Lok Sabha. Let me get in Sujata Paul of the Congress party. Sujata Paul, what will be the Congress's strategy? When Sonia Gandhi was asked about the bill earlier in the day, she said that this was our bill. This was the Congress's bill. What are some of the points that the party is going to raise? Jairam Ramesh of the Congress has called this event management. Sujata Paul, can you hear me? All right, we seem to be losing that connection with Sujata Paul. I'll return to her in just a bit. But Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, if I were to come to you, when it comes to closing the gender gap, as far as the gender gap index goes, we rose about 8 places in 2023. We're now 127 out of 145 nations. India closed 64.3% of the overall gender gap, but reached only 36.7% parity on economic participation and opportunity for women. Apart from the Women's Reservation Bill for the Lok Sabha, for legislative assemblies, what more do we need to do in order to give an equal opportunity, a path to women to grow to become corporate leaders, have a greater say in government policy making, a greater say in boardrooms as well?
Well, I'd like to start from boardrooms, where I think we need far more women board members. I think every company is very committed to this, and we are seeing a very visible shift to attaining gender equity in the foreseeable future. But having said that, I think there are so many issues in terms of parity that we have to address, that, you know, at least starting with a women's reservation bill is a good first step. I think when it comes to health equity, equity in education, economic opportunities, you know, women are shortchanged. And I think we do need to focus on empowering women, providing equal opportunities to women. And, you know, whether we like it or not, we are a country where women have been marginalized for many, many decades. And I think societal, attitudes have to change. So I think a reservation is the only way you can actually start correcting these differences.
All right, that's a significant point, that reservation is a starting way to change the mindset of people in the country. But Sujata Paul, to get a comment from you on what will the Congress's strategy be on the floor of the House, give us a sense, because Sonia Gandhi, when asked about the bill, said that this is a bill that the Congress had brought in. Jairam Ramesh has been asking about the timeline within which this bill will be applicable as well.
Yes, you know, we have been wanting this bill to be passed for such a long time. And you know that we had a coalition government, and therefore we had such certain compulsions, and we weren't able to pass this bill in the Lok Sabha. In 2010, it was passed in the Rajya Sabha because of the efforts of the UPA chairperson, Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, and the Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, and the rest of our, leaders. However, if you are talking about, what our stand is going to be, our stand is very clear. This is our bill. This is something that we have always wanted. In spite of the shortcomings, which we are going to be debating, you'll come to know what happens tomorrow. But the fact is that there are a whole lot of things that need to be addressed in this particular bill. But like I told you, there's that one word which has been used, at a number of places. That word maybe. Why maybe 33%? And who are the men to decide for me? You know, after 75 years of independence, nobody decides for me. And if we keep saying that somebody else is going to tell us, especially the men are going to decide how many seats we are going to get, that's going to be really sad. But we want this bill to be passed, and unless and until you get an opportunity, how are you going to showcase your talent and what you can bring to the table? And that is why this reservation is very important, and we are all for it. Okay. But there is one more point, Parikshit. You know, if you look at what they've written, that this is going to be effective for 15 years after commencement of the act. So the act will get, it will commence on the day of publishing of this act once it is passed. But what about, when it's going to be implemented? If, like you said, it's going to be implemented in 2029, rightfully. But after that, that means it will only be there for another 9 years, because 6 years would have passed by that time. So is this some kind of a
All right.
legislation which is only to put wool over your eyes? You stop. So these people need to stop pulling wool over our eyes, because women understand what's happening.
Okay, that's an important point, and we will wait for the BJP to answer that as well. Let me give a final word to Aditi Phadnis. Aditi Phadnis, the BJP could have brought this bill earlier as well. They had the numbers. What do you think? And one final statement on the timing on when this bill has been brought to Parliament.
Parikshit, normally I don't always agree with what the BJP does or what any government does for that matter. But here, I think the BJP has brought the bill to delay the shock effect that this will have on men across the board, not just in Parliament, but also outside in society. Because, and it has also brought the bill to kind of soften the blow and prepare women. Some of whom are not necessarily supporting this bill. And so we have to factor in the fact that this will be a shock to the system, and a gradual introduction of it, and giving people time to get used to the idea that they will stand to lose their seat to a woman, and that woman may not or need not necessarily be their wife, sister, or mother, or daughter. That element, I think, is the reason why the bill will take such a long time come into fruition. I'm totally in agreement with Sujata Paul that yes, the actual time for which this bill will be valid will probably be only 5 years.
Right, that's an important point, and we would see clarity on all those points from the BJP spokespersons as well. We had also invited them for this panel discussion, and we'll await comments from the BJP on this as well. But Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, Aditi Phadnis, Sujata Paul, thank you once again for being with us here on Newscentre.